introduce the events for tonight. Brian, come on. That's why I said.
Yay, Brian!
I'll trade you for a sec.
You want me to record you?
You just hold it. That's it. You don't even have to hold it. You can. Yeah,
I can spot.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good to see you all today. Professor Miller over here is a really big advocate for it. He's also the co-advisor. And the Nightly News, the mission of the Nightly News Media Club is to indulge student interest in radio technology and broadcasting, whether online or over the air, and to help them tune in to on-air performance skills that will help them land jobs in broadcasting. Any student of any major or concentration interested in learning about and practicing online radio broadcasting with a range of segments, from music to interviewing, to talk to feature, to news to alumni matters, is open to join and participate as a full member in the Media Club. The club also produces professional quality features and news articles discussing important events on campus and in our community. You can always keep up with the Nightly News by going to blogs.centralpenn.edu/nightly news. Following us on Facebook, and you can also follow us on Facebook and YouTube by searching for Nightly News Media Club at Central Penn College, and on Twitter at CPC Nightly News. As you all know, we recently started doing live streaming of baseball, so as tonight this will be streaming on YouTube for all our fans. Yeah, big deal for the school. So yeah, we got a lot of viewers. Our first game got over 200 viewers. So yeah, it's a big step for the school. And back there we have Mr. Curtis Volker. Wave to the people all there. Wave to everybody, say hi to Curtis. Did you guys know that Curtis Volker is a community relations coordinator at Central Penn College, and that he is competing in the 10-week Man of the Year fundraising competition to support the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society? Please feel free to visit /CPA18/C-Volker. I know it's long, but you can always go back to see it for it. And again, they're having popcorn back there for donations, and thank you, Curtis, for being here today.
Thank you, Curtis.
All right, I'm going to give the microphone over to Mr. Ellsworth here, and thanks again for coming out tonight.
Woo! Thank you, Brian. All right, the dude abides. Good evening. My name is Dr. Brant Ellsworth. I am an assistant professor of humanities here at Central Penn College. And on behalf of the school, I'd like to welcome everyone out here this evening to our second film in our Central Penn College Film Series. I am encouraged by the number of people who showed out tonight in support of Professor Miller, or just for a love of film. But I'm especially glad that you're here as we attempt to better understand and appreciate the meaning underlying some of our favorite films, past and present. Before introducing our speaker tonight, permit me to take a moment just to recognize some of the many people who've helped to make this event possible. First, to the dean who's taking my picture. Thank you, Melissa. To our dean, to the faculty and staff of the School of Humanities and Sciences, who have embraced this series and relished the opportunity to give back to our community. To Adrian, who's sitting there with a mouthful of, what are you eating today? Raisinets? Swedish fish. To Adrian, who's the Director of Student Services, who has secured the rights for our film so that I don't think the film is going to be on YouTube, but if it were, we might be in legal trouble for it. Yeah. But thank you to Adrian, to Janet. Janet sitting behind Adrian. Hey, Janet. She is our theater director. She's been so willing to share space with us and to help us walk through the logistics of setting up the chairs and the tables and getting everything ready for tonight. And a special shout out to Malcolm in the back and to the other student helpers who have helped set up the chairs and the tables, who have helped with the food. So a big, big, big thank you to everyone who helped make tonight possible. I'll also point out Curtis in the back, but I think Brian did a great job of doing a plug for you. All right, so this evening, before starting the film, we will have the privilege of hearing from Professor Paul Miller, who I have come to learn really needs no introduction, especially for the people here tonight. I see a huge cheering section for Professor Miller. A graduate of Slippery Rock and Shippensburg Universities, Professor Miller, who today is an instructor of media studies in the School of Humanities and Sciences, is the consummate professional and a living embodiment of dudism. He is generous with his time, especially for students and in support of student services or programs, for which Professor Miller has received recognition from both students and his peers. During registration week, for instance, Professor Miller's office is like the bowling alley. Students constantly dropping in around the clock to ask for course recommendations, scheduling assistance, or to talk about internships. In addition to his excellence in the classroom and with his advisees, Professor Miller has been instrumental in providing students professional opportunities within communications and media studies. As co-advisor of the Nightly News Media Club at Central Penn College, Professor Miller has transformed the nearby Boyer House into a podcast recording studio. He has recorded and released over 50 episodes of the Nightly News podcast, and as Brian said, just last week began live streaming with play-by-play commentary of Central Penn College's sports. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Paul Miller.
All right, everybody, we got to make sure of one thing right now. I heard from some people just in chatting before everybody came up. I understand there's some people who've never seen this movie. Please raise your hand if you have never seen this movie. Okay, so I just want to know who I'm talking to. All right, and that's fine. I will warn you that with the film series, there will be some spoilers here in the next half an hour, so please forgive me. But to be honest, the movie's 20 years old, so if you haven't seen it by now, you shouldn't get too mad at me for spoiling it. Well, you know, I talked about this on the most recent podcast where I was very lucky to have Brian interview me to talk to me about why I chose this film. Number one, I want to thank Brant, I want to thank Dr. Whaler, I want to thank Professor Reif for allowing me to have this wonderful opportunity to be here with you today and to talk about a film that really has made an impact on my life. And any of you that have seen this movie might think to yourself, this guy must not have much going on for him if this movie has made a major impact on his life. But honestly, you know, one of the things that for some of you may know, I'm quite the bowler. I'm not as good of a bowler as this gentleman right here, Mike Wargo, but my whole bowling team is here joining me in spirit today. And so that's really why I got into this film. It was a bowling movie, and I was a bowler. So this movie came out when I was 17 years old, and I was a bowler, and that's really it. That's the only reason I started liking this movie. But over the last 20 years, this movie has really changed in different points in my life, depending on the time. And certainly as I went to college, I developed a love of film and film study. While we didn't have a minor, I took like 4 or 5 different film classes when I was at Slippery Rock University, and still to this day, absolutely love good film. Now, of course, I like some cheesy films too, but don't hold it against me. So, the thing about The Big Lebowski that always has done it for me is the more and more I watched, the more and more layers it had to it. So for those of you who this is your first time, maybe it might not quite have the same effect after this that it would after like a second or third viewing. So there's 3 main things. They also did on a whole bunch of other until as recently as 2016. So just been won by the Coen most for Best Picture Academy Award 2016 Bridge of Spies. Let's be honest. When the film first came out, it was a colossal failure. US, they only made just over $2 million above their budget, and early on, critics just lambasted the movie. They didn't get it, it didn't make sense to them, and really, it was not very well received very early on. But even the most interesting thing about this is this came out only 1 year after Fargo. Fargo was one of their biggest critical successes, and then they follow it up with arguably, at the time, one of their biggest failures. And it only grossed $5.5 million on its opening weekend, and it only ended up making $17 million domestically, just over a $15 million budget. Now, $15 million budget, that's about as low as a budget as you're gonna get in a Hollywood motion picture. So this film was really not well regarded at the time it came out.
So what I want to do is move on to film noir. So we want to ask, what is film noir? Well, the best way that I can describe it is when we think back to the 40s and 50s, and I know that we don't all sit around and watch movies from the 40s and 50s, I got you. But if you think about those kinds of movies, you think about the old alleyways with fog and smoke and a lot of like very detective-y type films. And I give a couple of examples here. In fact, the Coen brothers actually said that the heroes, they have very high moral standards. They're always trying to protect others and do the right thing. The dude, all he cares about is his rug. He doesn't care about anything else. He cares about his buddies, he cares about his rug, he cares about his credence. That's pretty much it. So it's very interesting, and I want you to look at this as you go through the film. I want you to look at how the dude acts and why he makes the decisions he makes. Because again, that goes back to the film noir. Yes, sir?
Well, in his defense, the rug did tie the room together.
But of course, no question. So just to take one step further, and thank you for that, sir. Just to take it one step further, I want to share with you a couple of examples of some anti-heroes. Now, not necessarily in the film noir sense. I'm not going to sit here and tell you Die Hard is a film noir, because maybe it has elements of it, but it's not intentionally. But here's just a couple of characters from my past that I really like a lot that might demonstrate a little bit more. John McClane is a cigarette smoker, a heavy drinker, estranged from his children in the Die Hard films. Martin Riggs, same type of thing from Lethal Weapon, one of my favorite and my mom's favorite movies. And of course, one of my favorite, actually probably my favorite television show, Dexter, and if you've never watched it, you're really missing out. Dexter is the classic anti-hero. He is basically, he's a police officer who goes out and kills people when he's off of work. You really can't have much more of an anti-hero than that. But let's be honest. Let's come back to the dude. My advice is to do what your parents did and get a job, sir. Okay? The dude is, without question, one of the biggest anti-heroes in film history. He has zero redeeming qualities. He doesn't work. He does drugs. He's constantly with a drink in his hand. He doesn't even know what day of the week it is. He is the classic anti-hero in this film. Now, one thing that I do want to talk about is a very, very interesting thing that I actually kind of took paid a lot more attention to when I was researching this film. And it was the idea of the interplay between the dude and Walter. They really couldn't be two different people, okay? The dude is a hippie, he's anti-war, he even claims to be a pacifist. Every time Walter gets agitated and excited about something, the dude's first response is, "Take it easy, man." He's appalled by weapons. He even tells Walter several times, like, "Put that piece away." When he pulls the gun out in the bowling alley, he's like, "Put that piece away, Walter, they're calling the cops on you." It's so interesting how the writing worked with the interplay between these two. What's very interesting, and a quote that I pulled from the dude, "I love you, Walter, but sooner or later you're going to have to face the fact that you are a moron." Okay? And that's what's very interesting in the relationship that they have. So as you watch a film, I would really like you to pay attention to that relationship that's between dude and Walter. But Walter, of course, is a Vietnam veteran. He's obviously pro-war, going as far as to say pacifist. Pistol in his bowling bag. I mean, who's bringing a loaded pistol in their bowling bag to the bowling alley? No one. Okay? But not only that, another thing I'd like you to take a look at is every time he does have a weapon, it goes horribly wrong. In the scene at the bowling alley, obviously the cops come, but later on in the film there's an answering machine. They're actually suspended from league play, much to the dude's chagrin. Now this one was by request. Somebody, and I'm not gonna blame Joe, but I saw a post today on Facebook and my presentation was complete. And I saw something on Facebook and it said, "The dude hates the Eagles, come tonight to find out why." And I wasn't gonna mention it. It wasn't something that was on my radar. And I said, okay, well, if somebody requested it, I'll do it. There's a scene in the film where the dude is in a taxi, and the taxi driver has the Eagles on. So for any of you Eagles fans, you might not like this particular part. And he's had a rough day, and he asks the taxi driver if he would mind changing the channel because he doesn't like the bleeping Eagles. And the taxi driver takes offense, pulls over, throws the dude out of the car. And so a question was, well, why does the dude hate the Eagles so much? So I looked it up, and a gentleman, the music consultant for the film named T-Bone Burnett, actually says that the Eagles were like the exact opposite of Creedence. That Creedence came around in the 60s, they were very heavy into like the anti-war movement, and then the Eagles came in the 70s and basically sold out. And to Mr. Kaminsky, a good analogy here is old school Metallica versus new school Metallica. If you go for any Metallica fans out there. Same kind of thing. So they believed that it was a sort of a sellout type thing. So that was by request. There's also a lot of political undertones in this film. You see, I would actually like you guys to look for this, and when you see it, call it out. Richard Nixon's in the film. Not personally, obviously he was passed away by the time this film was filmed, but you can see Richard Nixon. You see, and they refer to Saddam Hussein. Obviously, the Gulf War is going on in the backdrop, keeping with that film noir. George H.W. Bush is on at the very beginning of the film. And again, this film is set during the Gulf War. And who could forget? Walter's constant discussion about Nam. How many times does Walter talk about Nam in this film? I mean, it's hard to even count. Now, here's one thing I would like you, and I'm hoping that none of you knew this. At the very beginning of the film, when the dude is walking around the grocery store buying his jug of half and half, which is erroneously called milk by many people in several things that I read, the date is September 11th, 1991. Now, obviously, this film was 1998, so it was before September 11th. I just thought that was a little eerie. But the bottom line is the dude is viewed as some idea of this political undertones in the film do bring themselves to film, because I know we're all ready. The Big Lebowski, and I talked at the beginning of the film about how much of a disappointment it truly was initially. But 20 years later, we look back at the impact that it's had. It spawned a religion called Dudism. They have a Lebowski Fest all over the country where people go and bowl and watch the movie, which I still have not yet gotten to go to yet. Actually, I think the closest one recently, I don't remember Pittsburgh. Louisville was the closest one that I recall. But I do hope to be in the history of, or in the past 25 years, which is pretty incredible. It was also ranked number 34 on their top 50 cult films. And in addition, the dude was ranked number 14 on the 100 greatest movie characters in the last 20 years. This is all very, very impressive. But one thing that I found very impressive is that it's at an 8.1, which I know, again, that's not going to blow you away, but the number one film is a 9.2. So The Big Lebowski, after all of these years, has had so much of an impact on our society. But what's the point? Why does this movie resonate with people? Well, one of the things that I really found interesting in my research about this film was what is so interesting about this is the way that it's made. Almost every movie you see has a beginning, a middle, and a happy ending. Now, I can't say that the ending is happy here, but it's not sad, because there's really nothing, the end of the movie is just like, really, like, well, what happened with this? What happened with this? They left these hanging intentionally because the end, or what's the perceived end, is not what's important in the film. What's important in the film is this, and when I was researching this film, this really stood out to me. We all have goals. Having goals in your life is very important, and I talk about this in my freshman seminar, my CPC Foundations class, constantly, about the importance of setting and having goals. The problem is because we continue to reevaluate our goals. Unfortunately, many of us never reach those goals in the end. What's interesting about the dude is he's pathetic. He's a loser. But he's okay with that. He has no issue. People berate him constantly throughout the film. You know what he does? He puts on his sunglasses. Wait till he's in Jeffrey Lebowski's office, and I want you to take a look at that. When he's screaming at him about getting a job, you know, get a job, you bum! You know what he does? He doesn't fight back. He puts his sunglasses on, and he goes about his business. And that's one of the things that I think is very unique about this picture, is that he's content with his life. I mean, how many of us now can literally sit there and say, you know what, we are absolutely content with where we are right now? I'm hoping some of you can, but to be honest, that's what's so interesting about this movie, is he shows what we all hope to be someday, just content, comfortable within ourselves, and he is. If there's one thing you can say about the dude, it's that he's comfortable with himself, and he's happy to be the dude. So, I'd like to present to you the Big Lebowski. And at the end of the show, I'm going to hang around for a Q&A session if anybody would like to chat a little bit more about the film. I do want to say, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all so much for being here. This means the world to me to even have this opportunity, and for you guys all to listen to me for the last half hour or so. So with that,